Hey Lowlight fans! In this video I'd like to give you a quick history and tour of my early 1959 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. I bought this car at the Back to the 50s car show in June of 2008 when my kids were still quite young. My first priority was making the car roadworthy by rebuilding the brakes, steering, and suspension. Here's the fully refurbished front beam, complete with new bushings. We occasionally drove the car for fun, but it began sitting more and more as other projects took my attention. 10 years later. The poor lowlight sat collecting dust until my now teenage son suggested I sell it. I started preparing the car for sale by inspecting the fuel tank. It was pretty gross inside because I had neglected to drain the tank before letting it sit for a decade. I removed the fuel tank and pressure washed it. With the tank out of the way, I detailed the frunk. I then reinstalled the tank with a new sending unit and outlet pipe. Meanwhile, I cleaned the engine. The fuel pump was caked with dirt, so I cleaned it. I also rebuilt the Solex 28 PCI carburetor. The air cleaner needed a deep cleaning, so I used electrolysis on parts of it. I changed the gear oil in the transaxle and the oil in the engine, and adjusted the valves as well. Brake pressure was still good, but I opted to flush the system with fresh brake fluid. In the process, I was reminded of this broken lug bolt stuck in my left front brake drum. I drilled it out and retapped the hole. I then chased the threads on all 20 holes and all 20 lug bolts. Most of the carpet had already been removed by a previous owner. What remained was dirty and decayed. The interior of the car smelled terrible due to having served for years as free housing for rodents. Much of their stench was emanating from this large mouse nest behind the back seat. We removed the nest and all of the upholstery and tar paper that had been soiled by the rodents. Then we de-stinked the exposed sheet metal with our power washer. The mice also nested up in the headliner, as you can tell from these mouse holes. The headliner had to go. The stink was bad enough, but I didn't like driving the car knowing that dust from the mouse nests was filtering down through the holes in the headliner onto me and my passengers. The car immediately began to smell better after removing all of the rodent-infused fabric and tar paper from the interior. As you can see from this old photo from 2008, the Ghia's finish was dull when I bought it, and when I took this recent picture in 2020, the Earl Scheib paint job was still dull. I lightly color sanded the paint with my dual action sander and managed to raise a good shine. We then buffed and waxed the car. I think it turned out pretty well. Let's take a closer look. Here's the chassis number, 1892237. Here's the part where that big old mouse nest was. We cleaned it all out, pressure washed it. Package tray. Also dropped down the headliner because it was mouse infested. Cleaned everything out up there. There's no smell anymore. Let's get a look at some more of this rust under the back seat. The pan halves clearly are going to need some repair. And down inside these wells, there's evidence of body filler. Not a ton, but some. Might have been a dent. Same on the other side. A small bit of filler, but everything else looks pretty solid. Unfortunately, this broke off yesterday when I went to open the engine compartment. Plastic's getting brittle. There's some of that bad pan. I cut away some of the chunks that were getting in the way, just dangling and useless. Here's how it looks with the seats reinstalled. Got some holes in the floor pan. Clearly these pans got to get replaced. The heater channels are also pretty bad. All the carpet was removed out of here before I bought the car. I took the remaining tar paper off that tunnel. This patch was done by a previous owner. The heater channel looks pretty bad. But everything else is pretty solid on the body. I pulled the pedal set out when I bought the car 12 years ago and rehabbed it. Bought some linkage from Wolfsburg West. Put it all back together. Here's a quick tour of the dash. Over on the left, got a couple of vent switches covered in medical tape, it looks like. Ignition switch, choke, speedometer. The odometer reads 78,000 miles on it right now. I don't know if it's rolled over. There's the fuel gauge, clock. This is not working. I haven't tried to troubleshoot it. Wipers. Headlights. The 6-volt headlights don't work though. I'm not going to replace them. I figured the next owner might want to go to 12 volt. Here's the radio. It also doesn't work. I haven't been able to test it because the speaker is shot. The cone is gone. The paper cone is completely missing. There's the ashtray. It's stuck and I don't want to force it. Here's the glove box with the famous Karmann Ghia sticker, plus an insurance sticker. And I've got some other parts like the lug wrench that comes with the stock jack and the jack handle that's used to jack it up and down. The grip's missing its leather cover, but I do have that as well. I don't think it can be saved. Up above we got our mirror, the dome light, plastic visors. Obviously this one's cracked, but it still works. And the passenger side is not cracked. It still works. And no headliner. Do a quick walk around on the 59 Karmann Ghia. The car's been repainted. Not a very high quality paint job, and it's not exactly the same as the original color. It's a little more of a red than the original color from Volkswagen. Back to the spot where you can see it. Hopefully that picks up. You can see some of that more orangish color in there. And there's obviously rust poking through in places. The car definitely had some body work done on it. There's body filler in these areas, and I think perhaps going up into the wheel arch slightly. I don't know if you can see it, but there are some pop rivets down in there holding on a patch. Perhaps this other side will be easier to see. I don't know. Awfully dark. Anyway, similar work was done on this side, on the rear quarter panel. And there is evidence from the inside that there may be some body work in here. You can see the wave there. The wheel arch. Anyway, I DA'd the paint to color sand out the dull finish that it had. There's Bondo down in here. Like a lot of these Karmann Ghias, the nose was hit at one time. It doesn't look bad now. Someone did a pretty decent job. There is some evidence of filler on this nostril. I'm going to show you a couple of things in the trunk here. There's the jack. I rehabbed the jack for this car. This is the original jack. And it occurred to me that some people maybe have never used one of these or seen them used, so I thought I'd do a quick demo. This opening here receives this handle, and it's used to jack the car up. On this side, there's a small receiver, receptacle, whatever, for see if I can get that on the shine, for this handle. You like to do it this way, and then the handle can be used to lever down on that piece there. You see how it's pushing down? That releases the jack. All right. So to jack the car up, this piece gets inserted into this receptacle here. There's one on each side of the car. Slide it up till it bottoms out. And then look at that angle. I didn't expect that, but it's correct. This is how the car works. So, got it positioned, and you just pump it up, like so, and then when it's time to lower the car, you just press down, and it releases the whole assembly. You can even slide it by hand like that. And you're done. That's the info plate that has the body number on it. Chassis number is the same. Now, this hole, I think, was created by somebody who mounted a gas heater in the car. There was a a 12 volt power source wire coming off of here, fusible link. It was just dangling. I think that was for the heater. And then down in here, somebody cut a hole in that little steering access panel that I think they used as the exhaust for the gas heater. So I have supplemental lighting so you can see. There's the horn assembly. That's where the jack goes in. And then here's where the dent is on the inside of the nose. It's pretty shallow. I have a feeling the bumper got pushed up into the nose. Someone pounded it out, put a little filler on there, and that was that. And that little guy is the reservoir for the brake fluid. And I replaced all the fluid recently. The rubber is obviously really old and crusty. I'm guessing it's original. And this is true, of course, for all the glass. All the rubber around the glass is bad. The glass itself is a little scratched up, but I think it's all original. Here's some more of that crusty rubber. It has the original security glass on there. These little guys come off all the time. It requires some glue to keep it on there, but I figure the new owner can decide what to do with that. Rear deck is a little rusty, but it's solid. It's pretty straight. And most of the body's very straight. There is a dent on this deck lid here. Shallow popped in dent. I suppose if I tried I could get some of that out. It's also rusting quite a bit, as you can see, along the bottom of this deck lid. The rust is pretty typical for a Minnesota car, and in this case the car also spent part of its life in Florida, which is also another state known for rusty cars. So I don't know where it earned most of its rust. I've owned the car for 12 years or so and driven it literally only about 100 miles. I've done a lot of work on it. It's got a new 6-volt battery. This is the original 36 horsepower engine. The number is 229-6164. It's mostly complete. Doesn't have the right fuel line coming down, and I added a filter and clamps just to be safe. This bracket's not original, of course, but I rebuilt the carburetor, give it a full tune-up, new points, cap, rotor, all that stuff. Fixed up the fuel pump. It's a very clean engine. I just recently reset the valves. It runs very nice. I'll let you hear it in a bit. Let's go around. The wheels are painted also. I took them off, media blasted them, painted them with PR 15 primer and top coat black. The seats, someone recovered them with this black vinyl, and they work fine. More of that crusty rubber. And of course most of the chrome is pitted from age. Here's a cold engine start using the choke. Put the car up on the lift so we could get a look at the suspension. Here's the front beam that I talked about before. It's completely rehabbed. I painted it with PR 15 paint 10 years ago, and you can see it's kind of held up okay. There are places where the brake fluid leaked down there from the reservoir, and it affected the paint. But it's been holding up nicely. I just re-lubed it too, by the way. And the kingpins are new. Those tie rods are new. The brakes are completely rebuilt. I just had the steering box out to adjust it. I was used to the old style steering box and didn't realize that these guys adjust a different way. They have two different ways of adjusting, so it's a little tricky. There's a gas tank. New shocks. Ditto for this side. The wheel wells are not too bad. There's surface rust, obviously. air ducts are intact. A little bit of a hole right there on the firewall, or whatever that's called. Brake cylinder. All the brake lines and hoses are new as of 10 years ago. Hold it nicely. There's the new outlet. It's not the correct fuel outlet. The original one has a reserve switch on it. But I have one of those lying around. I'll keep it with the car when I sell it. Here we are at the back end of the car. You can see more of the new brake lines and brake hoses from 10 years ago. Got new CV boots on there. These greasable brake lines or emergency brake cables are pretty cool. Anyway, new shocks, all new brakes. There you go, 6-volt starter. That's all POR 15 paint again. Black stuff. Fender wells are pretty solid with surface rust up until you get to here, and then we got some holes. There we go. There's a hole. Another big hole in that heater channel. Surface rust. More of the same. Here's your 36 horsepower engine. I just replaced the gaskets, cleaned the insides of those valve covers when I adjusted the valves. There was a little leak in the exhaust, so we put a patch on it. I just changed the oil. Got new gaskets in there and strainer from Wolfsburg West.